so much. I love you so much. I love you so much. I love you so much.
Hello, all you positive heads out there. Thanks for tuning your beautiful brainwaves into another episode of the Positive Head Podcast, where we are firmly convinced that creating success and happiness is rooted in understanding the ultimate nature of reality and the fact that as human beings, we are all immensely powerful fractals of the one and only source consciousness which creates and animates all things. After years of exploring this awe-inspiring truth on this podcast, I'm super excited to announce that we are now going even deeper down the rabbit hole on the new late-night style consciousness-elevating talk show called Optimistic, which features none other than you, the listeners. Optimistic is taped out of the epic spaceship-esque 8-bedroom property we call the Mystic Manor that myself and the rest of the Optimistic crew now navigate reality from in Venice Beach, California. And you are invited to come experience a Mystic Manor immersion week with us. During your week-long stay, you'll enjoy unique workshops, chef-prepared meals, one-on-one time coaching and consulting with me, and even co-creating magic with me as a guest on both Optimistic and an episode of the Positive Head podcast. When I started this, my aim with these immersive retreats was to facilitate the ultimate spiritual upgrade and tune-up, so to speak, for our guests while providing them with one of the most memorable experiences of their lives. And I'm happy to say that as of this recording, every guest at the end of their trip so far has told me that they have had a profound and transformational experience at the Mystic Manor and that they definitely want to come back. All that being said, we only have a limited number of spots available between now and next July. And as of this recording, about half of those spots are already filled. So if there's any part of you that is screaming, yes, I want to come, I feel like I need to be there, go now and book a slot with me to discuss how we can put our heads together and make it happen at calendly.com/talkwithbrandon. I know for some people, there is also that little voice in their head saying, why not? I can't get off work. I can't afford it, and on and on and on. But, really, Henry Ford, I think, said it best. Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. And I'm confident that where there's a will, there's a way. And I'm personally committed to doing everything in my power, including discounts and payment plans, to get you here if it is something that truly feels like a huge yes for you energetically and like you're meant to be here. Once again, the link to book time to discuss with me is calendly.com/talkwithbrandon. That's spelled calendly.com/talkwithbrandon. All one word, of course. And book in some time and look forward to seeing you soon here at the Mystic Manor. All right, all you positive heads. On this week's Soul Share episode, I'm very excited to have Tricia Carr here with me on the show. Tricia is a spiritual teacher, intuitive medium, animal and nature telepath, as well as a certified master hypnotist, and hold on, there's more, a host of the Charmed Life podcast. I actually had the pleasure of being on Charmed Life as a guest recently. Super enjoyed that. Tricia, welcome to the show, my friend.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me, Brandon. And hello, all you positive heads.
All right, so to start things off, Tricia, I would like to ask you the same question I always start with, and it is this. You're in an elevator. The woman next to you looks over and says, what's your passion? You have 10 floors to answer. What do you say?
My passion is to help humans to live their best life and to have that soul essence that I equate to the essence that's inside a seed, that everything and nothing, to be able to feel that essence and then see it manifest from the inside out. And that is in itself aligning with the universe, aligning with the ecosystem. I see everything, the universe, I like to remind us that we are nature, and the ecosystem has every single part of every element is serviced so that it can be its most magical, its greatest potential. You know, the flower that is its most vibrant color and aroma is serving the ecosystem, and the ecosystem is serving it. And so that is the essence that I recognize in people, see that higher essence, and help them to hold space for them to manifest that.
Wow. Well, you did the Willy Wonka answer, as I like to call it, which is, you remember in Willy Wonka when the elevator blasts into outer space or into the atmosphere? Yeah, man, that's okay. We allow Willy Wonka answers around here, so thank you for that.
Well, and specifically, some of the ways I do that, I'm a medium, I'm an intuitive channel, I'm a clinical hypnotherapist, and I'm also an animal and nature telepath, as you mentioned. And part of how I opened up to all of this was through the portal of communicating with animals, but nature as well. Like some of the most magical, universally aligned wisdom that I've ever heard is from a tree or a beetle or my little cat who's used to be feral. And because they are aligned, that nature and animals are more aligned than we are. You know, they're not perfect. They have a journey they're going on, a journey that includes contrast, but they actually are tuned to unity consciousness better than we are. And so I find them to be a portal into the inner planes, which is intrinsically the outer planes as well, or the higher frequencies. The inner frequencies are the same as the outer frequencies, as above, so below. I guess I'm saying the old Hermetic tenet.
Right. Wow. Yeah, that's a really interesting kind of concept to play with, that they're, you know, more evolved from one's perspective, or more connected, I guess you would say.
They're more natural. You know, that's what I think. I think that they're more natural. That's the
word I was about to say. Yeah, I was about to say, we've gotten into this, we've created these unnatural structures, you know, let's build, you know, cement boxes and cut ourselves completely off from the rhythms of nature and, you know, and from each other, and all the things that we now are realizing like creates a lot of the unhealthiness. And we're meant to be like these more communal beings. And, you know, it's like, it's wild to think we don't even know our neighbors. Like, definitely two you know, squirrels who live next door to each other and are very acquainted. So it's like, we could take lesson, I think, take note. And I love what you said earlier about the idea that, you know, everything is in service, and absolutely, like, you know, I think I often quote Gandhi, who said, if you want to find yourself, lose yourself in the service of others. And I like to then always add to that, why that holds true is because there are no others. And so once you realize that's how we actually like give to ourselves, is through, you know, serving these extensions of ourselves. And that's how the energy that we want in our own life finds its way back to us, even giving away what we want for ourselves, right? And so it's a very interesting thing in way for us to take note from nature and like learn from the wisdom of this incredibly brilliant ecosystem that we are somehow popped into.
Yeah, it's you know, the law of one, the raw material. And you ever read her? Yeah. And
I know of it. I haven't read it, but I've heard a lot about it. And my son recently read it. And
oh yeah. I read parts of it every now and again. I just get led to read parts of it, but they say other selves when they're talking about other people. They always say the other selves. And I think that's in alignment with what you're saying there. And it also just reminds me of, you know, I have when I was a kid, as a spiritual seeker, and I grew up in Texas, my spiritual seeking led me to the evangelical Christian church, because there was no other paradigm that I knew. And I mean, I'm a little kid. Yeah. I took myself to church when I was like 10, 11 years old. My family didn't go to church, but I have a background in the metaphysical kind of concepts that were the reason I think there's so much impact with that originally, and why Jesus, the man, was so impactful, was because it was very metaphysical. It was universal. And Jesus's teaching is such that we understand it now, the recorded history of it. He was always talking about nature. You know, I think that he was getting in trouble with the teachers of the day because he had the education of all those dusty scrolls that they had tucked away. And they were super mad at him because he wasn't teaching that. He was talking about seeds and he was talking about flowers. And they were like, but you have influence. You should be telling them about these laws. And he's like, they don't need the laws. They need to know what they already are. And one thing that we know is the golden rule, which actually exists in every belief structure, major religion or anything. And one of the ways that it's quoted, that Jesus is quoted to have said it, is love your neighbor as yourself. And you can kind of hear in that, like, you know, in the same way, but really if you you don't see it as a command and you just kind of see it as a statement of fact that you love another as you love yourself, to the same ability, the same quality, the same frequency. It's not possible to love another more or differently than you love yourself, that this is 100% a closed system of symbiosis and just one song, which is what the universe kind of really means. One song, universe.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. Yeah, I think of I don't know too many Bible verses by heart, you know. There's a couple, and one that I just thought of when you were saying all that is, and I say I know it by heart, I might be slightly off, but it's basically consider the lilies of the field.
Yes, exactly.
How neither they toil or spin. You know, basically like, look, the lilies in the field aren't struggling against anything. They're just being with, you know, flowing with the natural rhythms of their life. And sort of, you know, once again, you look at us in our unnatural states of, you know, I've got to achieve this or do this or somehow become more in order to be worthy of even being, you know, which is such a theme for so many. And it's like the lilies of the field aren't doing that, and we can learn from them, right?
Right. They're just present. And that's the weird thing that humans are capable of, that is so different than the rest of this natural planet. And that is to be non-present, to somehow be somewhere else in our mind. And that's something that as a hypnotherapist we work on, or even, you know, in my intuitive coaching and the energy attunements, is to just be back with your whole mind, which is present. When you're present, you can still do the playing in the future and playing in the past and, you know, that kind of fantasy. But we want to do it in a way where we're the master of it rather than the other way around, where when we have anxiety or depression or fears, then we are subject to the illusion rather than the illusion being a tool that we get to play with. And that presence is what, again, animals in nature are, but humans have this remarkable facility to not be here and now. And I think that's what the outer essences are teaching us as well. The different, you know, star beings, ETs that are facilitating our ascension process, our evolutionary process, is to remind us to be in the whole essence rather than allowing ourselves to be in the illusion and let that rule us.
Right. Yeah, it I just did a live taping a couple days ago of, you know, Optimistic, the new late night style show that I'm about to start releasing to the world that I'm so excited about. And it was an epic episode. Matt Kahn was the guest, and it'll be coming. It won't come out for a few months still, but you know, during my opening monologue, I actually talked about our referenced a quote from Bodhidharma, you know, the 5th century Buddhist monk. And he said, when you don't understand, you depend on reality. When you do understand, reality depends on you.
That's it. Yes, that's all of it.
Part of what you were just saying. Yeah, it's like totally that.
Yes. Well, you know, I just did a class in my, I have a membership platform where I kind of do all the weirdest stuff possible. You know what I mean? Like there's channeling and whatever, you know, we're just bringing through whatever it is. And the class that I just did was star seeds and ascension energies. And the ascension energy report that was brought to this little gathering was really about time, and how time is a property of us, that we create time, yet we are always saying there's not enough time. And we think of it as a resource that's limited, but we actually create it from our infinite from our infinity, from our eternal nature. And so what the channeled information came through was that when you align with that, with your mastery, that you actually just create wormholes. And wormholes are these portals that just allow you to be some when and somewhere else. And I had a direct lesson in that just the week prior, because I've been having a problem with not taking days off, which it's a weird thing when you do what you love, right? Brandon is like,
yep, I can relate.
We need to, but it's kind of, you get compulsive, and it's not a good thing. The kind of 3D lack matrix brags about never taking days off and working yourself to death and not getting sleep. And they brag about that as some kind of merit to mean that you are worthy.
Badge of honor.
Yeah, it's a badge of honor. It means you're worthy of the abundance. But, so I think that there's two things. We are obviously still conditioned by that because we're still here. But the second thing is, it's like we compulsively love what we do. So it's hard to remember to disconnect. Right. But we do need to. We need to for obviously the body. And we also need to because of actually needing to integrate the energies that we've been running. And so sometimes just Netflixing and chilling for a day is actually the highest, most ascended thing you can do, or reading a book, whatever. Yeah. But it's
definitely works for me.
It does. And I did that last week, and it felt so weird.
It used to when I did it. It's like ever since launching Optimistic, I've done less of that than I have, like a year or so ago, I was doing that quite a bit, and it was so good. And just to veg out and hear good stories, which as all the listeners know, I love good stories, and there's so much good programming now with just really good stories. And, and it's great to think of it in that way. It's like, oh, this is actually edifying you. This is actually helping you to just turn it off for a minute.
And they were basically saying, like, if you call it so, then it is so. If you decide that you're binge watching this Netflix show, if it's got a great, and that's the thing when people complain, like, I don't watch TV, is that, and it's like, that's fine if it is actually, you're utilizing that tool in a way that is not benefiting you. But if it is a great story and it's a piece of art that you are allowing to edify you, then it is so. Yep. And I had this random event of taking a day off, which shouldn't be random, but I shouldn't should all over myself. We go through different cycles and periods, and right now you're in one where you're doing less of the taking off and more of the taking on.
Yep, that's for sure.
And there are cycles. So when I took that day off, by 10:30 a.m. I was bored, which shocked me because I never get bored. Like, bored is not something that's ever in my energy. I just don't even think about boredom. And I was like, that's weird. What's that about? And then I heard this voice in my mind, and it was not my guides, and it was not my higher self. It was like in that other part of my mind, but it said pretty clearly, you're wasting time. You have a mission. And I was like, you're half right. I do have a mission. And then the higher voices of guides came in and said, no, if you decide that if you stay in that energy of how this is serving you, then basically you're creating that experience. And then was told later that I essentially created a wormhole for that day. So there's no such thing as wasting time, because time is something that I create.
Ooh, yeah. I often say, I'm working diligently on, becoming a master of time and space. I'm still figuring that one out to some degree. And it's, what you're saying is just that, like, that's time space mastery. When you start realizing, hold on, all of this is malleable. The story I tell around it is really the only thing that matters, and that's the most empowering. And we can tell these stories in more grandiose fashion. It's like we start small by telling little stories that seem like an easy reach, and then by taking today off, I actually created more time. More is getting done energetically. It's like working smarter, not harder, kind of thing. Or as Osho talked about it with meditation, if you should meditate 20 minutes a day, unless you're too busy, you should meditate an hour. It's like, totally. Like, you need to take this to create more non-busyness in your energetic field. And man, I can relate to learning that lesson.
It's interesting
at this point in my journey.
Yeah, it's like the tool, whatever it is that seems to be the impediment or the thing that is frustrating or limiting is actually the key. It's the thing to hack for you to be able to, because it's feedback. Everything is just feedback. Everyone and everything is just you pushed out. It is a reflection of your frequency. You're just projecting it onto a screen. And so if something is feeling like it's limiting or whatever kind of negative experience you're feeling with it, frustrating, then it's for you, the author, to actually go into that and allow that story to be, to take a different turn. With meditation, that's what when I teach people meditation, and they say I don't have time, and I say, well, then you hack time. You use that as the resource. You sit down with it and you say, I'm going to do 10 minutes, and you actually let time. You friggin' take it by in a chokehold, and you say, yeah, time, you're my, and you sit down with 10 minutes. You use if you're starting, then you use a stopwatch. And that helps you to not, or use like a timer. If you sit down for 15 minutes, you put the timer on your phone. And even if you're wrestling with your monkey mind for 15 minutes, but since you have it, you've mastered it and you said, okay, this device is in charge of time. And I also have a problem, for example, in this, I don't have enough time. Well, then there's always all these things to do. And that's probably devices and different kinds of technology that are pulling you in different directions. So you use technology and time, and then say, I'm in charge of you, you're keeping time, and now I'm going to stay here and breathe for 15 minutes. And then that way, because otherwise, if you're starting off, then you're like, every 90 seconds, you're like, well, it must have been like 5 minutes by now. What time is it? And then get out of it. Right. So whatever is there, you actually use it to hack what's going on. And, when we're doing something that's really challenging, like moving through the trauma that we may have suffered, or the shadow as we know it to be, then that's the tougher stuff, but that's where the greatest reward is. And I've seen miracles by doing that, by actually going directly into that essence and sitting with it. And I've had, if you love stories. You want to hear a story? You want to hear a story now, Brandon?
No. Whatever you do, don't tell me a fun, interesting story.
A story of miracle. So I had this awakening experience, which is another story. I'll tell you that one, you'll love too. But this.
Oh yeah, I'd like to hear. I was going to say real quick. At some point, I'd like to just get a little bit of backstory. So maybe even that makes sense.
Let's do that now.
Okay, and then we'll proceed into your other story. Stories are even better than a story in my book. So plural. Hit me with the plural.
Okay. Well, so. Like I said, as a kid, now I can see I was a spiritual seeker as a kid, and I had I was taking my cute little butt as a little kid to church. I was like hitching rides with friends' parents who went to church, and even walking because it wasn't that far in the little neighborhood that I grew up in. And it was a very traditional, like First Baptist Church of Saginaw, Texas. It was not charismatic. It was, what I mean? Like, it was a super dry, just very old school kind of church. And I went to and I opted to have a baptism, and my mom actually came to church for my baptism because she could tell this was a big deal. And so this was actually my first kind of awakening at 11, which is a good time for that to happen, because you've kind of just started to get deep into the conditioning about that time. And I went down into the water. It was a full immersion baptism, and I had a light body activation happen, a powerful metaphysical experience that I can remember like I just had an astral projection last night, kind of. This is how visceral this experience was. And this column of light went through my entire body and what I would now say my field. Of course, I didn't know that, but as I went into the water, this light went all through me. And it was, like I say, a light body activation. I didn't have those words until sometime in the last few years. And I came up out of the water trembling and shaking in ecstasy. And that's not what was expected in a First Baptist Saginaw Church, baptism. That wasn't the thing that was promised or seen ever.
You're supposed to see like Helen Brimstone or something that you're running from.
yeah.
If it's like my church, the church
it wasn't even that. There wasn't even hellfire and brimstone in this church. It was so boring. At least there'd be a little passion.
Oh man, at least we had the drama. We had the drama of like, hey, you better do this or you're going to be tortured every Sunday.
Yeah. I definitely went to those churches, but where I started was not that. It was like the super boringest one ever. And so anyway, I came up out of the water and I was shaking and crying. And the pastor, whoever baptized me, was kind of like comforting me because I think he just got scared that I went under the water. You know what I mean? I was just a kid who was scared of water. So, flash forward and go, I did the church thing is kind of in and out, but it really, just the limitation became really obvious, even as a teenager. And so I did leave the church, and probably in my 20s, I was doing, I was actually meditating. I was doing moving meditation. I was an avid runner. And I remember just saying, it's like my mind is on a ride. And that helped me so much because my childhood was also fraught with all kinds of abuse and trauma. There was alcoholism and my father beat my mother, and he would threaten her with guns even. And I was the youngest. And so there was a deep, deep trauma. And so all kinds of, really hard stuff. And then as a teenager, from like 13 until 18, when I left, my mother actually married another person who abused me like directly. And it was kind of very much like being imprisoned. And so it was mental and there was also physical violation that went on. And so I had a lot of stuff to kind of unpack. In my 20s, I was, like I say, running, and I was studying consciousness teachers like Deepak Chopra and Dr. Wayne Dyer, of course. And so the consciousness study and the mindfulness had started to seep in. I didn't even know those words because I was also very isolated because in my 20s, I got into this situation where I've kind of replaced that person who my mother had married. So I had a different kind of prisoner. I had this other person. And finally, when I was about 27, I moved out of this cocoon and this other kind of narcissistic, abusive situation. And by the way, I just have to say, yes, I was, for much of that time, I was with like a narcissist, but I gave that control to the narcissist, even as you know what I mean? Like I was the codependent who was that's how those energies were able to stay together for so long. So I do not claim victimhood in that scenario. I was studying, and then it's again, fast forward again. And my life had really, I'd done all that healing. My life had started to improve. I met my husband, and I had this really great career that it took me a while to manifest. I mean, I came up in extreme poverty. So the fact that I could actually support myself and in a way that was really impressive, it was something that I liked doing very much. It was very creative. It's different than what I'm doing now because after you do an awakening, you're like, oh, geez, this is no longer my dream job. That's weird. I didn't even know it. Right. New
chapter, new path.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't know. I thought that I was set. So anyway, I was feeling my life was so much better. I was feeling so great, but I kept waking up in the morning in this, great life, great job, great husband, great animals. And I was feeling like, what's that feeling? That's weird. And then I would kind of let the feeling manifest into a thought. And the thought was something along the lines of, oh, I hate my job and I don't want to do this day. And like I said, I really liked my job and I felt very empowered by it. And I was like, that's weird. I don't feel that. That's okay. And I could make it go away when I kind of when I let it bubble up because it wasn't true. Now, here's the thing to just give you a little more backstory. I was doing some of the consciousness, mindfulness, seeking and stuff, but I had never once considered going to a psychic or an intuitive. I'd never considered any of that. So I never had. And it was like probably partly because with the Christian background, that's evil, bad. And then just with social conditioning, that's fake. It's a crutch. It's weak, all of that. So all of that stuff was my conditioning. And I'd never even thought to go to a psychic. But that day I did. And I was like, it was a few days that I was noticing that. And I just thought that, this can't be good for my body if I'm having these weird thoughts that are not really my thoughts, whatever that means. Now, I'm sure to the Positive Head listeners, you're like, oh yeah, so what? That's being empathic, or I didn't have those words then. That's not something that Deepak Chopra talks about.
Yeah, right, exactly.
At least I hadn't come across it if he does talk about it. And so I was like, hey, you know what? I've never done this thing where you go see a psychic. So maybe I'll do that just on a lark. I trust my mind. That was the other thing, like not thinking that I was going to, my mind was weak. That was something I had to heal from. And I did make an appointment. I found a psychic, like by looking at Yelp, made a 15-minute phone call appointment. And I had like 3 questions. One was, this thing has been coming up for me. I've been having, I wake up in the morning and there are these thoughts and these feelings and they just don't make sense for my life. And so, of course, the psychic is like, well, yeah, because you're an empath, and that's easy. Any of us, you're like, I don't have to be psychic to know that. Again, us on this side of it. But for me, this was brand new information. I knew the word empath from Star Trek: The Next Generation, Counselor Troy. That's what I knew of empath.
That's funny.
And so I was like, what is that? What are you talking about? And she's like, yeah, hold on. And she like takes a breath, taps in, says, yeah, I'm getting that you're an empath. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what that means. She says an empath is someone who experiences other people's feelings and thoughts as though they are their own. And as she was saying the words before they had totally gotten out, I was in catharsis. I would just started to cry. Like it was like a moment of claircognizance or download because my being was reacting before my conscious mind was even caught up to it. And I've since like I recognize some other things about myself. Are you into? Do you know human design, Brandon?
I do. Yes.
Are you a generator?
I am.
Yeah, I can tell. I'm a reflector, and so that's something that I recognize as kind of like reflecting. And if you don't use it consciously, then you can map to it and you actually identify to it, kind of like that. Ultimate empath, but if you aren't in the mastery of it, then it's a negative thing. It's not a positive thing. Anyway, so after that, I was set on a journey. I was like, okay, if this is how I function, and it seems to make a lot of sense for my life, there's got to be a good way to do it. I know I'm not made poorly. I know that this isn't
right.
I know there's a right way, and so I got into this coaching. This woman who. Her moniker about it is to go from suffering sponge to sensitive savant. And I was like, yes, she's speaking my language. Because if you go and look up what's an empath, and they'll be like, you're really broken and weak, some people.
Right.
And so I wasn't liking any of that, getting into the language of it. And I was like, no, I refuse it. So I did this coaching with her, and it was right. Yeah. And I did this 4-month coaching where we met like once or twice per month, and we kind of basically do energy healing. And through that, I started a really proper meditation practice because I was just loving it. I was just loving the experience of being in the energy. And I say proper, I mean regular, really focused, dedicated, very conscious about it, as opposed to before it was just happening kind of randomly and it was a part of other things. I don't mean like there's a right way to do it, a right way for me, a proper way for me. And in my very last session with this woman, I started the session because I was worried about this cat, this feral cat who had been showing up on we kind of do this beginning, like, what's going on with you? And I was like, well, there's this cat. I've named her Helen. She has been around for about a year, but she's recently started to come up on my back porch. And she's like looking in the window at me, and she's really pregnant. And she's like, it's like she's saying, I need help, because she's a feral cat, but she's like looking at me and making eye contact.
Wow.
And so we did our session, and we go through like a chakra questioning, and we're in each chakra, but we were like stuck on the sacral, and we'd been on the session for a long time. And I was like, okay, this is taking too long. We could just wrap up our session. She's like, no, there's still something here we need to see. So let's go back in. What are you seeing? Doing like guided visualization. And I was like, well, there's a little girl, and she's in an Easter dress, and she's singing and dancing, and she's talking to animals. And my healer, she interrupts me, and she goes, that's it. That's what it is. You're an animal communicator, and you need to uncover that gift. And I was like, wow. What? You're crazy, And she's like, when we're done, go out there and talk to Helen and ask her what she wants you to do. And I mean, again, fresh about this. It's not like I was in any community that talked about this stuff yet. And so I had been pondering what to do with Helen because she was very pregnant. You could see that. My husband was like, are we supposed to intervene in animals' lives and like terminate their pregnancies? It's different when humans make that choice if, whatever. Not to get into that issue. I just mean like, he was like, I don't know if we're supposed to do that. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know either. And so I I mean, if I had a bias going into this experience, talking to a cat for the first time, I would have liked Helen to tell me, I'm great. I want to have all these babies. And, babies are awesome. And I'm going to meet a friendly cartoon owl. And it's going to be super.
Everyone needs a friendly cartoon owl.
I know, right? I've been that for some people. And
me too, I think.
Right. So I went and sat down. It was after my session and I was all open apparently. And I just knew how to do it. And I just reached out with my mind. And Helen was sitting on my back porch. And so I just reached out to her with my mind, with my heart. And I just said, do you need help? And in my mind's ear and pictures as well, I saw, felt, heard very clearly in an essence, in a frequency, I would say now, like a literary voice that was not my own, not one that I recognized.
Wow.
I can't have these babies, is what Helen was saying. I can't have these babies. And
wow.
I'm a bit surprised because again, like I'm thinking, then the other side of my mind is going, but you don't want to help her. Like you don't want to intervene. You don't want to take responsibility for this. It's scary to take responsibility. And I'm like, okay. She's like, I can't have these babies. And I was like, okay, well, here's the thing. I can trap you. And by the way, it's a very humane trap. It just, gets them in there so that you can take them to the hospital. I'll trap you and I will take you to the hospital. You will probably be very scared and you'll be uncomfortable. You'll go unconscious. They'll take care of the babies. You'll come back and you'll be very sore and I'll put you back in your environment because trap, neuter, and release or trap, spay, and release is actually a really great way to help the feral population. Because if you just remove them, then the population will repopulate it, just as a side note for anyone. And
gotcha.
And so, I had already trapped, spayed, and released another cat who was, still homing around that area, feeding her and everything. And so I was like, and if we do that, then you won't have those babies and you won't have babies anymore. And you can live your life out like this other cat that I could refer to, Marisol. You could live your life like Marisol. You won't have to have babies anymore. You could just retire and be here and have food, Right. And Helen's response back to me was, I can't have these babies. I don't want to go to the hospital. I don't want to have babies anymore. And I was like, okay, well, that middle piece is non-negotiable if you want me to help you on the other two pieces. And also, I just don't want you to keep, having kittens that could potentially die out here in this not wild. It's Burbank. It's a city. It's not a place for, animals to just try to live. Domesticated animals actually need homes. We interfered upon their biology by making them domesticated. So it's like a homeless cat. Anyway, so I did trap her. She trapped really fast. The next day, I had arranged to take her in. And when I picked her up, the vet released her to me and said, it's really great that you brought her in. The timing was really close because she was very close to going into labor. And one of those babies, the baby was lodged. And if labor had actually started, she would have just labored herself to death and she would have died. And obviously the babies would have died too. Wow. And so what she said, I can't have these babies, was literally true.
Wow.
And I have it documented by telling my husband and telling my healer, you know what I mean? Like, so I'm not crazy.
Wow.
And so I was like, well, I think there's something to this. Because again, what really convinced me was just that the frequency that I felt in my mind, that it was undeniable, even though it was my first time doing it consciously. I did always do it, but when it's your own animals, it's like your own body. So it's like knowing that you're coming down with something. You just feel it, it, or knowing that something is the right choice for you because your own animal families are actually a part of your own body, really. They're extension of your oversoul. When it's some other animal that's outside of you, the telepathy is strikingly different. And so,
wow.
So then that started me on the journey. I started to practice animal communication and just with friends, just for like a few weeks. And then I went to a class for I was like, I gotta learn, you're in that starving stage and you want to know everything. We've all been through those, especially in those kind of awakening experiences. And I went to a class and this woman was actually, she teaches mediumship, or she is a medium. And she was like, okay, so where are you? Because this was like a class to work on your empathic nature, because that's what I was recognizing to be the thing to work on still. And I was like, well, I guess I'm an animal communicator or something. And I don't know. I guess I'm an empath. And she's like, oh, okay, well, you're a medium. And I was like, who? I don't even know if I believe in that, which is silly.
Right.
And she's like, wait, you're an animal communicator. Have you been communicating with past animals, like, dead animals? And I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, my friends' animals. And she's like, and have you been getting evidential kind of messages? I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, they tell you something about the person and it makes sense. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that happens. And the person doesn't know. And it's stuff I didn't know from the animal who's dead. And she's like,
right.
Okay. So see, that's animal mediumship. And you're a person.
Wow.
So you have things in common with people being a person. So ergo.
An animal you're closer related to.
Yeah, exactly. You're kind of that animal. But that was for me the portal, because again, the animals in nature are just aligned, and so they have so much patience, and they're already experts in spirituality. When you sit with your animal or you sit with a tree, you are receiving that energy healing, that tuning. They're holding that space for you, and that's why we always talk about grounding and meditating and getting in nature, because it reminds us that we are nature and gets us back. Being your natural self is being your spiritual self. It's all one essence. So how's that story for you? Saving a cat's life.
That is a great story. That's pretty epic. So I imagine there's been many cats since that you've talked to.
Yeah, it's really awesome. It's really wonderful working with animals, and it's always different. It does have a lot to do with their relationship with their human. If they are an animal I get hired by the human to work with the animals. I do work with wild nature as well, and that's also always very different. It has to do with, I communicate also with like species, an entire species, and sometimes I'll communicate with the collective energy, or sometimes with the deva, the overarching deva, that's like the elemental energy that's working with that species.
Wow.
But yeah, it's really amazing the things that you learn. I learned about how like density and dimensionality from a tortoise before I'd read anything or heard anybody else talk about it. He was explaining to me density and dimensionality. So that was interesting. They really are like, it is, nature is, sometimes people feel like if they ground, or what we think of as grounding, that's somehow being non-spiritual. But going deep into the essence of the earth, Gaia, your own body, your own the physicalness of it. It reminds me of, what is that? Is it a Google film, The Eye of Kate or something like that, where they zoom way out into the cosmos and then zoom way into a girl's eye, a woman's eye, and they look the same.
Right. Oh, cool. I haven't seen that, but yeah.
Oh yeah, check it out. I think it's either Facebook or Google.
Fractals, right?
Google. It is Google, because they use Google Earth. You know what I mean? Yes, exactly. All fractals.
Yeah. Wow. How cool. Well, so with your animal and nature telepathy, one of the things that struck me, when checking out some of your work, you're talking about it as a portal to ascension and manifestation. I'd love to hear you explain that.
Well, a portal to ascension is with some of the examples there, like the tortoise explaining to me how the universe works in density and dimensionality. This one tortoise told me, and he was in hibernation at the time, and I'd never communicated with a tortoise. This was when I was still just practicing without being paid. I was like in my beta testing of it. And this, she was actually a co-student in some program that I was in. And she asked me, I was working with her animals, and she's like, well, my tortoise is hibernating. Can you communicate with a hibernating tortoise? And I was like, I have no idea. Let's see.
Yeah. Right.
And so I reached out, and sure enough, there again is that voice that is very distinctive in my mind's ear. That is, hey, yeah, no, this is a great time to communicate. Actually, this is when I do a lot of my soul work. And I was like, okay, soul work. And he was giving me little movies of his soul, or his consciousness being in the astral experience, kind of like astral projecting the whole time. He said, so he could essentially astral project the whole time while his body was doing what it's doing. He said, but then he could also go and be deeply connected with his body and experience deep rest and what it feels like to be inside the body that is deeply resting. And I'm like, wow, that's rad. And so we looked at a past life with him and his human, and he showed me that he was actually a big rock in a past life.
Wow.
And I know. And at that time I was like, whoa, we could be rocks. And then I was like, oh, wait a minute. I guess so. Why not? I mean, that's how I was like, it was still in my beta testing, like I say. And so he's like, yeah, of course. And he said, I do many different iterations with the element of earth because I have a great passion for the element of earth. And so he showed me like a picture book of being crystals and stones and salamanders and snakes and, insects that crawl and live it with the element of earth and actually being the earth too. And he explained to me that it's like in physical, in physics where water can exist, H2O can exist as a solid, a gas, or a liquid. Well, we're the same way. So that's how he kind of gave me a framework to understand density and dimensionality.
Cool.
So that's kind of so far as ascension, ascension and manifestation. One thing you could do is you can sit with, if you have animals in your family, I don't use the word pets as much. Not that you can use the word pet if you like, people, but I don't prefer the word pet. For me, I don't know. Like an ownership,
like a superior hierarchical kind of thing.
Yeah. And if it doesn't strike you that way, no judgment. I just tend to say animal family,
Yeah.
So that's just me. If my husband called me his pet, I'd be like, you want to learn about what that? No, I am not your pet.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's kind of my measure.
Bites.
Yeah, exactly. This is a feral.
Exactly.
So, or a tree, if you aren't one to have animals, in your family, or you could sit with the birds that are wild birds or a tree. But if you sit in that essence and meditate, but if you just allow that to imbue your being, and you come really present with it. And what actually happens is you change your brainwave frequencies, and you're being facilitated by that natural component of whatever nature or animal it is. And your brain actually shifts from a negative high arousal or even a negative low arousal. So negative high arousal would be anxiety. Negative low arousal would be depression. And you shift to positive, either neutral or high or low. It doesn't matter if you're over in the positive, but you tend to shift to the neutral and positive arousal state. And what's great about that is that the neutral positive arousal state is actually the state of ownership. Because how gratitude is a powerfully manifesting state. When we are in gratitude, and that's because gratitude is actually claiming that you own it. You're in co-ownership, which is your right. The truth about us, which is what we forget as humans. So animals or nature can get you into that neutral positive arousal state, neutral arousal positive state. And as you get into that state, which is the state of ownership, co-ownership, universal co-ownership, then you can bring in the visions that you have, the envisioning of whatever it is that you are manifesting at the time, and allow those frequencies to map to one another, and magic unfolds. So there's some things that you could do with it, and you can actually communicate. So I've also just communicated with butterflies and beetles. And this one experience I had with two butterflies was I sat down with the butterfly when I was on a hike and asked the butterfly, is there anything that you have a message for me? And this butterfly said back to me like, well, do you have a message for me? Like, kind of like, how rude. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, you're right. How about I say, what do you want to talk about first, rather than just like demanding? And I said to the butterfly, well, I know, right? And I said to the butterfly, okay, well, I guess I really have enjoyed that. I used to not really understand that I could communicate with butterflies, or just used to not know things as well as I do now. And now I do know it. I was kind of just telling the butterfly that the journey of contrast is really fun.
Right.
And the butterflies kind of took in this information, and I could feel, I'm just going to say him. I don't know what its gender was, and it doesn't matter. Yeah. I could feel him saying like, whoa, because he felt that I was presenting, and he's like, am I supposed to like have more contrast in my life? Because he didn't have as much contrast.
Oh, wow.
And then this other butterfly came and like landed right next to him. And this butterfly's essence was definitely like an elder. And this butterfly kind of like got in on the conversation and said, well, do you regret or have any like deep contrast over having been a caterpillar and then going into a chrysalis and decomposing yourself and becoming something new? And
wow.
it was sort of rhetorical because we both sat in it like, that butterfly just went through that, but he didn't have the emotional craziness that humans tend to have over metamorphosis.
Yeah.
And then the elder butterfly took us on this journey, just again in the imaginal plane of places where, we talk about the butterfly effect, but just that the compassion isn't even needed when you're so unified. Now, this is a weird concept because we're human, we need compassion. But when you're so unified, compassion is actually correcting something, you see? And so that's what the butterfly, I was explaining to the butterfly compassion, and the butterfly was like, I don't have compassion. I just am. So it was like a weird place to be in. And you can only kind of be there for a second as a human, I think. But it's a good kind of frequency tuning to just realize that we can be so unified that there's no contrast to love. There's just love.
Right. Wow. That's pretty fascinating, actually. What a great story. I've got one that I want to share with you and just see what your intuitive take is on it. So a couple years ago, I, out of nowhere, sort of got all of a sudden obsessed about the idea of having a dog at some point, which is, which is not normal for me. Like I love dogs. But I wouldn't say I'm a huge animal person like some people. Like my sister is obsessed with dogs, or how some people are. It's everything. And for some reason, very busy person. Like the last thing I need to do is all of a sudden switch gears and start focusing on, one day in the future I'll get a dog, and what would I get? Let me research for hours when I have all these pertinent things to do. That's not a normal sort of move for me, right? But that's what happened this given day. And so I started researching, and after hours of looking, I'm like, okay, I'm going to get some kind of a white shepherd or something, white wolfish kind of thing is how it landed. And it just it spent hours, looking and everything. And then the next day, a friend I hadn't heard from in a long time said, hey, I just pulled your Mayan astrology for you. Have you ever seen it? Probably not. Check this out. And one of the things in it was a big, subsection was the white dog. And it was like when the white dog comes into your reality, your spiritual centers are going to open up more fully, your psychic senses more fully, et cetera, et cetera. And so that was a couple years ago. And now here at the Mystic Manor, we have all this visionary artists. It's the Mystic Manor is also, as you're going to come soon, right? So you're going to see, it's like it's a visionary art gallery. And so we have all this epic art. My dear friend Vajra, who was on the show recently, is one of the best visionary artists in the world. So he's friends with all the greats out there. And so he's sort of been, not only doing all the booking of the live painting on Optimistic. We always feature a live painter, then we talk about their piece during my opening monologue. But he, and by the way, if you guys aren't familiar, some of you listening for the first time, go to optimistic.tv, and you can learn all about the new show, late night style show that we're doing. But anyway, so Vajra started bringing in all this visionary art, and one of the pieces I just noticed, 2 weeks ago or so, I'm like, I'm looking at them all, just checking out this art that's living on my walls now, and here's this piece that it has this. A lot going on in it, and then in the bottom right corner, there's just this white shepherd looking dog painted in, almost contrasty. It doesn't really. It seems kind of stand out and weird with everything else that's happening in the piece. And I'm like, wow, that's kind of interesting. Here's a symbolic white dog that just entered my world, and I can say the last few weeks there's been more activations and wild stuff happen. And you and I talked about this before we turned on the microphone. Some of the stuff that's happening in this portal here at the Mystic Manor, it's getting pretty mystical around here. So I don't know if that's the dog itself, or maybe it's a predecessor to the actual physical dog. I've kind of made the joke I'm not going to go out and buy this dog, and I'm going to wait for him to literally show up on the front doorstep, kind of like your cat, right? Hey, Brandon, here I am. I'm ready. I'm coming in, and so I've sort of jokingly said that for years, oh no, I'm not going to go find him. He's going to find me, and that'll be then I'll know the timing, of it. And so in this case, it just appeared on my wall. And maybe I'll post this piece. Oh yeah. I forget which artist it is, but it's really cool. And so just curious what your take is on any of that.
Well, yeah. So my read on it is that you're actually activating some soul energy. It's like you're activating some DNA, and this is, what some people call spirit animal or totem animal. And so this is what you were experiencing it in your field, and that's why you had this curiosity. You bring in like, oh, well, maybe I want a dog all of a sudden, because it's coming up to your awareness. And so it may or may not have to do with actually having a white dog, shepherd in your family at some point. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. Right now, it doesn't. Right. That what is happening is the activation of this animal, the spirit animal for you. And the white wolf that I'm picking up for you, this is just me reading you. And always with anything in spirit animals as well, it's what you feel about it. But this whiteness is the energy of clarity. It's the energy of communication and expansion as well. So that's what the white color is about. The wolf character is leader. Also one who is surveilling and one who is protecting, and very powerful, very strong power animal. The white essence, though, is so very telling of you moving into these new ventures of communicating and connecting. Wolf is very family oriented. The wolf actually, they mate. I don't know if they actually mate for life, but they definitely mate for a very, very long time. I think they do. More or less mate for life. And so they will mate, and then the children of the wolves, the wolf pups, actually stay with their parents for well into their maturity. And so they will stay with their parents until they're like 2 or 3 or sometimes even 4 years old, and they're physically mature by then, and they work together and they live together as a family. And this is why our domesticated dogs, they appear to work as a pack, but it's really that they are like juvenile wolves, essentially kind of like eternally juvenile wolves, and so they work as families as well. So it's not wrong to say that they're a pack, but what's even more accurate is that they're a family. And this is what you do as well, Brandon, is you collect people together and say, we are family and we are doing this together. Totally. And so that wolf is there helping you. And so I'm seeing the wolf in your field now. If you want to connect and communicate with them, when you connect and communicate with this wolf in your meditation, you'll feel deep peace and clarity. You'll feel groundedness, and you'll feel the expansion that comes with the energy of white as well. Because white is like the explosion of a supernova. And so that's what's being held here too. This is also the connection of the Archangel Gabriel being the archangel overseeing communication, water, emotional energy, clarity. That's associated, the color white is associated with Archangel Gabriel. Oh, Archangel Gabriel is also the archangel who oversees the cardinal direction of west, which you are in the west too, which is interesting. Yes, very, very west, like on the water's edge of west. And again, water is a big part of this here too. So when you connect with this wolf, you can ask questions, but the questions are going to bubble up from in your heart, like that still small voice of God, as the Bible says. But as the source energy voice, you're not going to hear it from without. You'll connect with this energy, but you will feel it deep within, and it will be a quiet and definitive experience that you have in the heart. And in also this having to do with your ascension energies too, because I'm drawn to your high heart, which is the chakra that's between the heart and the throat. And so there's an activation there, and that has a lot to do with Christ consciousness and the spirit becoming flesh and the divine becoming human kind of energy. So that's what I pick up on. Does that make sense?
Yes, and that was an epic read. Thank you. Wow.
My pleasure. Yeah, he's very powerful. Just like here's the other thing too, is that it's actually it's an actual being, it's an actual consciousness. It's not just symbolic, the spirit animal, this white wolf, which you can give a name so you can benchmark them if you like. But he actually is going around, like how a wolf will hunt or surveil. That's what I was saying. And so he's actually going into like in the spirit realm and bringing connections to you, and also protecting and allowing, because I just see him circling and then standing guard and looking directly at you. So he's kind of doing things like if you need help with something, you can kind of put the supplication out there and he's going to go and get someone for you. Wow. Yeah.
That's so cool. Super, super cool. I love that.
That is cool. I do too. I love that you became obsessed with it. And isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting how those things happen? It's so wild.
Really, he really is. It was so random, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It was like the next day or whatever. I was like, what? Why did I do all that? Like, what? I can't deal with the dog right now, or any time in the near future. Like, you know, it was sort of just like
it's just illogical. A spirit dog. That's all.
Yeah, right. Exactly. How awesome.
Yeah.
Wow. So one of the things that I guess comes up for me is, you know, I like to, I've started asking people, and it always leads to something interesting is, you know, what is it that's most alive for you right now? What are you most, you know, feeling the most excited about, or new perspective or new experience?
Well, I don't know if it's not new, but it's prominent. And that is that a new understanding or a new experience of how everything is feedback, everything that you're experiencing, and being able to be at peace and be present with it, and that everything is here for you. So even that which is not manifesting is there for you. And to be able to be in that kind of calm place of that everything is there for you, and to be in that co-creator energy. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist, and that's some of the energy that I work on when I do one-on-one. And I also do I lead group, hypno journeys. I actually have a regular, I work at the Den meditation here in Los Angeles once per week doing group hypno journeys. And that's really awesome. But it's so magical working with the subconscious mind, which is what we're doing when we're doing anything, intuitive reading, or, you know what I mean, any of our manifesting creator process. The subconscious mind is the causal plane. You know, it's when we connect into that essence, that is the collective subconscious as well. And so to magically work with that, where you know that with in hypnotherapy, with about 6 hypnotherapy sessions can impact long-term change, and that is relative to about 600 cognitive behavioral therapy sessions. That's a statistic I heard recently. And so both are valuable, obviously, but you can do it yourself. You know, that is your meditation or your inner communion or whatever that practice is. But to work with it very consciously so that you are dropping into your subconscious mind, bypassing the critical and conscious mind, and dropping into there the new knowns, the knowns that you want to be in your subconscious, so that they will start to outpicture in your world. And so whatever is in your world, whatever is being outpictured is there. And that is the map of your whole mind. And you'd be working with your whole mind then, because your conscious mind is the tool that actually analyzes and, executes the tasks. But it's really only, do you know the conscious mind is only 12% of your whole mind, and the subconscious is 88% of your whole mind? And so if we're walking around kind of overdrive in that conscious mind, then that's why we keep seeing patterns, because the conscious mind can only know what has been. It doesn't know what could be. And it can't work with that. It can only receive orders from the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind will block anything that is, sealed off with the critical mind. It will block anything that is unknown. And so that's why habits can be hard to break. And that's why starting habits in an incremental sense. I actually heard you and Sam talking about this a little bit on the last episode, I think it was. And you were talking about starting new habits. And if you just work out for 10 minutes today, rather than trying to knock it out for an hour and a half, the first day, incremental habits are a way that you can start to allow a new habit to start. So 21 days or 21 times is the general measure for starting a new habit. And so if you, even in one single meditation or hypnosis session, you can reinforce to yourself in that, not in the stimulated critical mind way, but when you're in that essence and you're actually communing with your inner essence and with the universe, then you can give yourself the affirmation or the suggestion in the positive manner 21 times, and it will start to become a new habit. It will start to outpicture in your world. It's kind of crazy. It's magic.
Wow.
And that's why I named my show Charmed Life, because this is magical. We live a magical space, so that's where I am right now, is just seeing how we have this direct line to shift our physical reality. And that starts with shifting our inner reality. The inner reality is actually more real than the physical reality.
Right. It's the root, right? So it's like, being obsessed with the physical reality is sort of like, oh, I'm obsessed with the effect. Yes. As opposed to the cause. Like, let's get to the root of what's going on. Well, if we're going to trace things back to the root, it's all starting, within and then projecting out. So it's that's a big shift for a lot of people on this journey, that realization, and it's such an empowering one too.
It is. And then
it's like the quote earlier from Bodhidharma.
Yes, totally. And then to add into that equation is grace. Because we're experiencing in our inner reality, and it's like, yeah, but I have to pay my rent or whatever it is. So we have needs in the outer reality, of course, and the space between the inner reality becoming outer reality is grace, and that is where the ecosystem, as I was saying, or the universe is stepping in and has your back. In this moment, you are well, and so there is grace, and that proves the process. It works, and to be able to trust the process and be in this state of grace is that state of appreciation, is that state of gratitude. And I'm getting chills right now. So I know we must be tapping into some truth energies.
Yes. Channeling.
Yeah.
And that really that's another kind of thing that comes up, I'm seeing, it seems like almost everyone I know is becoming a channel now in some way.
And I know.
I think maybe it's always been the case. Like all art, I believe is channeled to some degree. And it's like, I'm curious if you already kind of answered the question. Yeah. Oh yeah, it is. I agree. And I'm just, it's like people moving into these super inspired state and having the feeling or the awareness that it's somehow coming from some, some other part of themselves, extension of themselves, soul family, guide, whatever. And you have all kinds of different people who in different levels of experiencing that. But it's fascinating to me how many people I know at this point that, are having some level of experience that they would refer to in that, with that title of, it feels channeled in some way.
Totally. Well, that's actually when I first was opening up to these abilities, my husband and I had been together 9 years. And like I said, never had a psychic reading. So it was quite new for our relationship, besides just me, And he's a musician. He's actually a composer. And one day when we were having kind of like just this discomfort about, wow, I'm changed. There's seemingly changing so much. And what I said to him that day, this was like download and spirit helping me, was I'm actually not changing. I'm just becoming more of myself. And my husband kind of sighed a sigh of relief and said, that's what I've always wanted. And he's like, and truth be told, I've always known a shoe was going to drop at some point, and I don't know what it was.
Wow.
so when he kind of like wrapped his mind around that, and when I explained it to him, because he's like, I'm just worried because I don't do that stuff that you're doing. And I'm like, are you kidding me? When you write a new piece of music, you sit down and the melody and the orchestration comes from somewhere or nowhere. And you have skills, obviously, to actually put it down and to execute it, but that's the same process. And I actually do have a specialty in my hypnotherapy practice, being in LA and being around, because we have a post-production studio. I actually have a specialty of working with professional creative artists to be both more professional and more creative in their profession, because unfortunately, because it is channeling, it is intuitive connecting. Creativity and intuitive connection are the same thing. And my husband and I were talking about this really famous in the realm of film score recording and studio musicians, this famous pianist. And, he said, we used to say we would say, oh my gosh, after one take of something, that one riff that you did at this part, you know what I mean? Like that. And when he was playing piano, he's like, that was amazing. And he would be like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't remember because in the channeling energy, you kind of get a little amnesia, when you're just so in the flow that your conscious mind doesn't really map it or keep up. So I was like, exactly. Because he's channeling when you're doing improv or something like that. Channeling, that's what that is. It's very natural. Anytime we're in the creative state, and this could be in business. So you can be an accountant and you're in flow and you're like, these numbers, yes, they are working with me. And numbers are a very subconscious language, which is why numerology is so beneficial to us as well. So that makes a lot of sense. Channeling is, it's very natural. Some people don't do it with actually speaking, but it's very natural if it does if it does work, that is the modality, if you are sort of throat chakra dominant, but all of us actually speak, all of the humans do. So,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
Light language too. Do you have friends who are people who are doing light language?
Yeah. Actually, on one of the forthcoming episodes of Optimistic, I actually get a light language.
Love it.
She basically starts speaking in light language. And speaking of all the optimistic, magic that's been happening here at the Mystic Manor lately, one of the things is there's a woman here, and since you're here in LA and you're going to be coming over, and I love the idea of starting to do some workshop stuff together, because we're doing a lot of workshops are starting to happen here from the local community, and but we can explore that. But one of the women, Leah, who's here is sort of as a resident Akashic record reader, energy healer, all the things. And she's had two people, including the person that I've been dating and seeing for a while, Karen. Her and another person in the last week actually had dreams with her where Leah comes through to them in a dream and says, "Hey, it's like on a phone call or something." And the phone rings and it's Leah. "Hey, it's Leah. I've got a message for you." And then it's like, she just goes into light language, like,
that's rad.
Yeah. And this happened a couple times in the last week to two different people around here. And it's like, whoa, like, so, and then I have another friend who, started about a year ago or a little more. I had someone who spoke light language on the show, maybe a little more than a year. And that was her first experience being able to interpret what's being said. Mm-hmm. And so when the most recent one happened on Optimistic, she was there for the live taping of it, because we have a 30-person studio audience, and she happened to be there. Or actually, I'm sorry, we sent her the footage, even though it's not out yet. That's what happened. She wasn't there, and we sent it to her like, "Hey, can you interpret this one?" And she gave this whole reading on what was being said to me in that moment, and like, it was pretty cool. It was like, and it was so relevant and like powerful. Her interpretation even of it.
Oh my gosh.
And
so cool. No wonder I
super cool.
prompted to ask you about light language, because you very much are experiencing that right now.
Yeah. It's definitely happening all around these parts, and it's just a whole nother thing. I mean, what is your take on it? Would you say it's just a way to sort of unlock people, subconsciously? Like, what is your sort of take on the power of light language?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a form of channeling that is bypassing the construct of verbal language. So it's like energy healing. It's also like telepathy, because telepathy is bypassing that construct. However, in order to translate telepathy, like, for example, if I do it with animals, but here's the other thing. Telepathy is our natural language. And so we do it human to human as well, which is what you and I are doing this whole time. And that's exactly what I'm doing when I give you the spirit animal reading too. I'm reading your subconscious mind. I'm reading, when we're also creating the conversation, creating new energies at the same time, because it's resonance, and resonance is two energies coming together to make a third frequency, which is the one frequency then. And so light language is a way to use the physical instrument, and without having to be limited to, the construct of created language. And but it's bringing it into the physical instrument and to the physical reality to shift it up. And by the way, you were saying there's all kinds of crazy energies going on. I'll bet you some of this light language channeling stuff has activated that, because it brings the frequencies into the physical, by using the instrument that is typically sort of relegated to something that has already been a created structure, and it takes it in. There's still a created structure because it's the physical instrument, but it's bringing in an uncreated or a more potential energy in a way that's more pure. And so, did you experience speaking in tongues in your childhood church experiences? Did you ever get in those churches when you were a kid?
No. That was not a part of. I wish it had been, but
yeah. And so I did.
Fun.
That was one of the churches I ended up being in. And so light language was something that, because I actually had someone utilize speaking in tongues when I was in the church in a way that was kind of aggressive to me. And, it was a great experience for me to be able to gain my sovereignty. It wasn't a big deal. She just was kind of like charging into my field, uninvited and like speaking at me. But it's so beautiful. It is the utterances of the soul, and then being able to interpret it then later is that other aspect of it to help us to bring it into the whole mind, because we're talking about the subconscious mind being 88%, conscious 12. So when you interpret it, you're including that whole mind essence too. You're welcoming in the bridge between that 88 and 12%, because we don't want to just be in the subconscious mind. We have a conscious mind for a reason. And so it's very, very powerful. And I see more and more of that too. Like you said, more channeling. And there's just a lot of freedom and a really powerful kind of frequency activation with the light language.
Yeah. Speaking of this, the same woman, Leah, was talking about how much she's seen like over this sort of the portal here at the Mystic Manor. And there's so many workshops and, guests coming each week, listeners of this show who want to come and spend a week here. And all of them are having powerful transformational experiences. And, so much energetic stuff is happening here. And she said there's just like all these angelic entities that are like swarming over this place, creating this like vortex of magic and transformation. And I'm curious, is that something that you tap into, is like seeing or communicating with the angelic realm as well?
Oh yeah. That's when I channel, I usually go through, not always, but I typically, a lot of the time I'm going through the portal of archangelic energies, just because these are really, arch meaning archetype, and they have, they're in this position of authorship. So, I do that. I channel other energies, just whatever is in our highest good. But I have a series actually, of archangels and universal laws. And it's this series that I did, and I have a book, a companion book with it. And I channeled with an archangel, I channeled from an archangel perspective and attunement and information about a particular universal law. And so, for example, the very first one was Archangel Michael and the universal law of one. And it was crazy. I'll have to share it with you another time, because it's a really intense concept, but it's really amazing. But yeah, actually, as you were talking about it though, and there are angelic energies but what I'm seeing around Mystic Manor and you too is also unicorn energy, which is an angelic realm as well. The unicorns are in the angelic realm, but it's unicorn energy is very much ascended energy, ascension energy. So the process of ascension, and unicorns are opening portals and activating portals. They tend to come in when the ascension energy has reached a certain pitch, but there's like a lot of unicorn energy around. And then so far as around the earth and sort of cushioning what's going on and, moving through some of the dense energy that necessarily comes up when we're receiving new ascension energies, moving through those dense energies are dragons working with Mystic Manor as well. But you do have that. You have that Archangel
we have
Gabriel.
Dragons all over. In the art, like Vajra, my friend, is like paints the most amazing epic dragons you've ever seen. And he had his wedding here yesterday too, and he talked about being a dragon and like he paints all. It was wow. Wow.
Yeah,
cool.
But you do have a really strong archangelic energy, the Archangel Gabriel, the communication angel, which again makes so much sense. But just this really powerful.
Biggest I was going to say, the biggest what I feel is like a soulmate energy in this life. His name is Gabrielle, and so she's the most angelic human I think I've met, and not really in my life at this point, but definitely a big like chapter in my life that led down like all these other relationships, and so much came from meeting that person. So it's interesting that would be the one, because that's a significant name in my life.
That's
and a lot of synchronicity.
And sometimes the synchronicity is so on the nose that I'll actually just say, you know what? I think the universe is actually just a hack writer. Because if I wrote this story, it would be too synchronistic. You know what I mean? Like you couldn't make this movie. Right. But that's right, because that's amazing. Like this catalyzing relationship in your life is, the namesake of that archangelic energy. So, wow, that's really beautiful.
Yeah, like literally, I met that person in 2012, and then my next two relationships basically came through meeting her. So she was like really significant, and then the next two, including who I'm seeing now, came from that initial meeting on my birthday in 2012, which I have like a lot of like the synchronicity with my birthday is like just wild. Like it's a 15-minute story. It's my dad's birthday, great-grandmother, great died on that day. She had a partner commit suicide on that day, and his name was the same name as all my relatives where they're from in North Carolina. And like this little itty bitty town, like his first name is Anson, and her in the name of the town is Anson.
Anson,
and that's just like.
I'm so sorry, I freaked out. That's the name of my master, the first or second, I can't remember, guide that I ever met. My master guide's name is Anson. You can go listen to podcast. Backlog of podcasts of mine. Anson is the name.
Whoa! I got chills. Yeah! Wow. Yeah, then that's like I just shared with you literally the birthday story. Like it goes on. It's like I'm getting where I can't tell it anymore because it's gotten so long. Like it's so many layers of synchronicity. Yes, right. Yeah, I'm glad I just threw out the Anson piece because it's tied to Gabrielle, and since we were talking about her, but it's even up to this last birthday on July 28th. Like my friend was here who is going to be on an episode. His partner's the one that channeled the light language to me. They were both on together, and he landed in town, and his brother happens to have my birthday, and his brother sent us a message like to both of us, "Hey, happy birthday! And look what I just found walking around in my new town." And it was called Optimistic Eyewear, and it's like a glasses shop. Like what? And I'm here with his brother, and it's both of our birthdays, and and it was spelled the same way, MYSTIC.
No.
I'm just like, whoa, that's the most recent addition, but it just goes on and on and on and on. And what a trip! Like because that's not exactly a really common name, right?
And is it spelled ANSON?
Yes, I believe so. Yeah, that's how the county is definitely spelled. I'm not sure. I've never seen his name spelled out. I didn't know him or anything. He was passed before I even met her. But so the Anson guide that I connect with, like I say, it was when I was early on in my development and everything, and so my teacher for mediumship was like, go into meditation for this was like kind of ask to meet your master guide or a prominent or primary guide, and so. This is who I connected with. And so Anson, and I asked for a name, and the name Anson is what I got. But Anson is actually, he's always been with me. And when I was a kid, I had imaginary friends, which actually are my spirit guides. And one of them is Anson. And he reminded me of my two imaginary friends. And the imaginary friend I called Polish because I was very little, and because he was so shiny to me, and he has long shoulder length hair is how I see him. So I made him kind of a woman as a little kid, and as a little girl probably I was more comfortable with an aspect being like a mother figure. And so Anson is the name that he gave me. The other, by the way, guide who is still with me, that was an imaginary friend, I called her Little Mama when I was a kid. That I found out later. So when I first started connecting with this guy, not knowing it was Little Mama, I was connecting with this, it seemed like a gold skin leprechaun. And I was like, okay, whatever, I'm connected with a leprechaun. And after a while, she was giving me these names, and it was like Lee, Lelia, Layla, all these different Lily, all different versions of a similar name. And I was journaling them. And then again, long story short, I don't know anything about my family ancestry, but I went on a little path asking my cousin what our grandparents' names are, because I really didn't know. And I found out, seeing census records, that's the name of my great grandmother. And all of those different iterations of that name were on the census records in different ways, because I fill them out by hand. Wow. And I called her Little Mama. So she was like a little version of my mama. So Anson is one of them. And then, Lilia is actually her name, is the other one, Little Mama. So that's really wild. And one time I was this is like probably about 3 years ago. And I remember I was on a trip, and I was like texting with my assistant, and I was waiting for an Uber because I was on a trip, and I was like kind of like feeling off, you know what I mean? And I was like, oh, I'm having a hard time, and chatting with my assistant. And then I get a blip from, in the hotel lobby of the Uber ride, and it said, Anson is here.
And I sent the screenshot to my assistant because she knows about my guidance. And I was like, everything's going to be okay. Anson is here.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So
that reminds me of, wow, that's so cool. And, it makes me instantly think like, okay, so it's all interconnected. We're all, and everyone who's showing up in my story, and more, I'm finding like these deep levels of connectivity, more so than ever, with new characters. Like you're a new character in my life, right? Us connecting, on your show recently and now here, and you live close by, and it seems like it's going to be in alignment for you to come and, sort of co-create some magic here. And, and so I'm instantly like, whoa, what's the connection? What's I'm so curious about like, what's the history? Like, what's the history between souls that come into your life? And, these idea of soul contracts and like, oh, who were you to me? Or vice versa. Or who is this? It's just it's so fascinating. I so look forward to the time when I can like pop open the unimpeded Akashic records and just like see all the connections and like how and why and who and, where all the family links happen.
Well, you can do that. I mean, it could be fun to do a small circle of looking at that together where everyone's induced into the journey together. Basically like what people do with ayahuasca, but you don't even need substances. You don't need ayahuasca to have those journeys together, especially if you're experienced, with working with the energies like you are, like we are. And that's not to give, I don't have an opinion on using DMT or anything like that. I know it's not for my physical and my soul and physical instrument. It's just not for me. But I know it's a real, genuine experience for people. However, you're just accessing what you already have access to. So, we could get together and do that.
A hack to. Yeah, that sounds cool. Like, that would be a great workshop and experience. And so, anyone out there who wants to come and experience that, we'll make sure you come on the week that we set up Tricia being here, and we'll do that. Would be really fun too for the quote unquote random people who end up here on any given week. And we did that, and to be able to see what the connections are between all the souls that are present. I had someone who was on the show a while back, maybe a year or so ago, and I remember at the beginning of it, rather, he was like, "Oh, let me do a quick energetic clearing," because he's like, "Yeah, you and I have some past life stuff I can see. Okay, let me clear, like do this little thing." And he's like, and actually, and he was very numbers oriented. Speaking of numbers, he's very numbers oriented. He's like, "Yeah, I see all the math of this stuff." He's like, "So about 20% of your interviews you have significant past life connection with, and then another smaller percentage is you certainly have some." And it was just like really fascinating to sort of get his vantage point.
About you because because being a generator, I think that makes a lot of sense because generators in human design are generating the life force of the planet. And so that's kind of like 80% of your work, but 20% would be karmic. And that's what I was thinking is like a karmic circle, like a hypno journey circle where everyone is induced and we're exploring the karmic journeys, and karma, not in a bad way, good, bad, mundane. You know what I mean? Like that's what it is. And for me, being a reflector, and also I have a karmic life path number. Every single one of my connections is karmic. You asked me something new that I'm excited about or interested in or whatever, it's that every single one of my relationships, 100% of the things that I do are karmic, which is not exhausting at all, but it's, it's just, we have different roles, like our auras function different ways. And you have this role of generating the life force of the planet, you and Oprah, because she's a generator, you know what I mean? Like that kind of energy, that's what you're doing.
I definitely feel resonant with her.
Yes, no kidding, right? And
I have a crazy Oprah. I actually have a crazy Oprah synchronicity story where I was shown like a connection between her and I in this very fascinating way. Okay, so I've told this a long time ago on the show. Some of you may be hearing it for the second time, but probably a lot of you never heard this. So I followed her on Instagram or something, and she posted a video with her and her best friend, whose name was Gail. And if you know anything about her, you know who Gail is. And like, I haven't seen a lot of I think that's the only video to date I've ever seen her post or that I've clicked on, right? And I just happened to watch it, and instantly it was washed over me like, oh my gosh, Oprah, it feels so much like my mother's energy, and Gail feels so much like because a lot of times one of the things, Tricia, I'll notice is sort of the connection between souls. I'll feel it. And then when I get to know the new person, like if I meet someone new, and then once I meet the new person, I will then start seeing all the connections between them and the person I've known for a while, right? I'll be like, oh my gosh, you feel so connected to so-and-so. And then I'll see all these parallels. And so I was having that kind of feeling like, oh my gosh, I feel such a parallel between Oprah and my mom, and then Gail and my mom's best friend, whose name is Lynn, right? And I just, thought about that for a minute and felt into it. And I was like, oh, okay, cool, whatever. And then all of a sudden it hit me just a few minutes later, a little bit later, I was like, oh my gosh, actually, I'd completely forgotten. Lynn is a few years younger than my mom. Well, Lynn had an older, they've been friends like their whole life, since childhood, and they grew up next to each other. And then I remembered, I was like, oh shoot, I had completely forgotten. Lynn actually had an older sister who got leukemia and passed when her and my mom were like 6 years old, 5 or 6 years old. They were the same age, and Lynn was like 3, right? And my mom literally would sit there and play dolls with her on her bed as she's, making, sick and getting on her way out. Yeah. And guess what her name was? Gail. And I had forgotten that. I'd completely forgotten that. So that was my mom's first best friend. Gail passed. My mom lost her best friend to leukemia at 6 years old, and then Lynn became her best friend, this whole life.
Gosh,
Get
so
this. Here's where it gets weird. That was like at nighttime one evening. The next morning, I get a text from my mother, Lynn, who lives in Pennsylvania. My mom's out here in California with me at this point, or near me. And she gets a random text from her friend Lynn in Pennsylvania, who had found an old picture of my mom and Gail holding hands at 5 years old in, 1955 or whatever. And so my mom then turns around and sends it to me. Goes, hey, look at this picture of me and Gail when we were, 5 years old, these two little girls. And like literally all this happened the night before. And the next morning I get a picture of, and then I call my mom. I'm like, you're not going to believe this. Like, I just had this whole realization. And then I'm telling my mom, I'm like, you feel connected to Oprah to me, and Lynn feels connected to Gail, her friend. And my mom said, well, I always call Lynn the white Oprah. And then so now it's even getting confusion. My mom refers to Lynn as Oprah. And I'm like, what? I didn't know that. Right. And then it was just, yeah. So that's my Oprah story, the connectivity.
That's amazing. Well, what that all seems to indicate is that there's a lot of shared oversoul there. So you and your mom, or you and Oprah, and all of these energies are that you have the same oversoul. And so the oversoul complex, in case anyone's like, what the heck are you talking about? It's not, we're not talking about higher self. We're talking about oversoul. And there's approximately, and this is not a static number, but approximately 15 to 16,000 just humans on the planet are like from the same oversoul, according to about how many oversouls there are and how many people are on the planet. And again, that's not static, but it's just a way to give us like an idea of what that could be. And so, that's not very many people but at the same time,
relatively speaking, that's close family. And when you say almost 8 billion people on the planet.
Yeah, but if you think about, those energies some of those energies might be collected next to one another to sort of generate the same soul purpose, to help with the missions. There could be other people in China from that same oversoul. And again, it's not a static number. Maybe it's 100,000. Maybe there are more oversouls at this time.
In one cluster,
Yeah, it depends on what reality we're shifting into at the time. That's just to give us an idea. But that's what it seems like to me. And the Gail energy, the name Gail is such a spiritual name, to be of the earth, to be of the archangelic soul of the earth, Gaia,
Wow.
And it has to do with,
right. Yeah. I didn't even think of that.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing.
Wow.
I love it. So, So you and Oprah, huh? Yeah, she's probably like, and that's why some people experience her as a spirit guide too, because she is sort of working from this archetypal energy at this point, and always has been. I have a kind of experience with Prince where I actually had an astral projection, and this was like 2 or 3 years before he passed, so he was still incarnated, but I was experiencing him as a spirit guide. And we're talking about time as an illusion anyway, so it doesn't really matter. And what's funny is my best. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
How do you do?
You finish first, and then I'm going to add my little Prince tidbit.
Okay. Then my best friend, I hadn't met her yet, but she at the same time she had a similar experience where she had before he died, like 2 years before he died. It was really at the same time she had an experience with Prince and actually wrote a blog about it. But she and I didn't meet for like 3 years after that. So it was kind of wild. We had the same connection. So what's your Prince deal?
All right, here we go.
One.
So one of my really great friends, one of my best friends, she has actually been on this podcast a long time ago because she had a astral projection experience after hearing one of my guests who talked all about astral projection, and then she had her own, and then I brought her on as like a co-host, and she shared it one day. Her name is Beta, and Beta's best friend was Prince's like muse. I'm forgetting her name off the top of my head. I met her years ago with Beta, and so Beta and her used to, she would be invited over to Prince's house where he's like baking a cake for them and then would do a private show, like just for them hanging out, eating cake that he made. And like the only other one person that he did a symbol for was Beta's friend. And I'm forgetting her name off the top of my head, but there's a song all about her. There's, he just like totally like she was, and it wasn't even always romantic, like with them. I think maybe it was some, but for a long time it was like they were like really close friends, and he just was always wanting to like take complete care of her. And supposedly she had heard that he like was like felt indebted to her from some past life kind of thing. But but yeah, when he passed, I remember Beta also telling me the story of the day he passed. She smelled in her car like, I want to say it was eggs or something they used to always prepare, cook for her. The smell of that was like permeated her whole car, right?
Wow.
And then she found out he had just passed.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I love all the connections.
Pretty wild, huh?
So cool.
Yeah. We could do this all day. I just saw Beta a couple days ago, actually.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. What a really cool life experience to have that connection with Prince. He's such a beautiful, just such a beautiful energy on this planet.
Yeah, definitely is an inspiration. Wow. Well, I think we could do this for so much longer, but I suppose it's time to wind down here. And, one of the things that I'd love for you to do is to share with the audience how that they can continue to connect with you, follow your work. And I know, you have different offerings, some of which you're gracious enough to give sort of a special P-head, discount on. So maybe you can take a few minutes and just explain all that.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So, my website is Tricia Carr Charm. My podcast called Charmed Life with Tricia Carr. Just website's triciacarcharm.com. Not charmed, charm. And so I do one-on-one sessions with humans, and in which we do whatever it is we need to do. If it's mediumship, if it's connecting with your spirit guides, intuitive ability assessment, education, energy healing. Channeling is often a part of it. And you can actually, in my sessions for humans, my full session with humans, you can throw in some animal communication. And I do animal communication as well as a service. And so that's my one-on-one. And my hypnotherapy practice, I'm actually doing inside a coaching program at this time. And then I'll be launching just hypnotherapy as a separate kind of therapy in the next couple of months, probably. But I do have a lot of programs. Teaching is my jam. I love teaching. So I'm actually launching live my animal communication program. It's a comprehensive program, and it's going to be live in December and January. We do like 2 weeks of education, 3 weeks off for the holidays, and also integrating the experience. And it's held in we have it in a private study group and on Facebook, so that people can practice together. And it's really amazing. I do it live once per year, but I have the education on demand all year round. And so that is about to happen live. And that's something I'm extending yet to the Positive Head listeners at a discounted price. And so we have a link in the description here for you guys. And so go check it out. You can read all about
we'll post that there.
Yeah, and I even have like a little sample lesson on the page where it has all of the information. It's very, very comprehensive. But I do have 2 free offerings too. I have one mini course called Meditation, the Portal to the Soul. And then I have another one that's like an intro to animal communication. And it's like a preparation and I mostly talk about ways that you can commune with your animals. And there's like in both of those, I record and produce meditations with music channeled by my husband. And that's a big part of the work I do is recorded, produced meditations. So there's like downloadable meditations and activations in both of those free offerings. So those are available. We'll put those links in there as well too.
Cool. That is epic. Thank you so much. So yeah, if you guys want to, take advantage of any of that stuff, like when, as Tricia just said, just look at, we have the link posted in the description that'll take you right there that applies the discount and everything like that, and links to the free stuff as well. And wow, so super cool. I have a feeling there's going to be some people that are wanting to do this. I instantly think of like my sister and niece who are like so animal crazy. And so maybe it would be a cool Christmas sort of thing for me to do for them, like us to figure something out. But hopefully they don't listen to this podcast now. Actually, I don't think they hear enough. It's like my brother. He's like, people ask him, do you ever listen to, his podcast? He goes, no, I've had to hear him my whole life.
I know, right? And my husband, anytime my husband's like, oh yeah, I watched some of your show or I listened to some. I was like, you did? That's amazing. I would so not watch your show. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, right.
I'm kidding. But it really is, because you're so close. It'd be like listening to yourself. Like, do you go back and listen to your own podcast, Brandon?
Never.
No.
Actually, I can't say never. I've done it like
for the guests. Yeah, I've done it for the guests.
I probably listened to a few of my episodes, at this point. So
yeah,
maybe a handful. But wow, so amazing. This has been actually just such an epic, fun conversation. You're so easy to talk to and connect with. And
oh my gosh, likewise.
Thank you so much for coming on. I do have, as we sort of wind down here, one last question for you. And it is this. In 60 seconds or less, what is the meaning of life according to Tricia Carr?
The meaning of life is remembering that you are the resonance of the universe. To remember that, as some texts and some sacred thought may say that God is love, that in fact you are source energy's ability to love. And remembering that resonance is what we are here to do.
And so it is. Well, one of the things I will leave with, Tricia, is I think having you on as a guest of Optimistic would be really cool. And then maybe we could even have you come the day before the live taping is on. Our guests show up, our retreat guests. We have three rooms here at the Mystic Manor. That's for listeners who want to come and spend a week. And then they come on Monday and they leave on Sunday. And Saturday night is a live taping of Optimistic, and they get to be a part of the show and, come out on stage. And so what would be fun to do is have you on as the main guest on an episode. And then the night before, since you're here locally, maybe we could do something, or sometime that week, where we actually do something with the guests, like the guided thing that you were just talking about. So if any of you guys, if that sounds like fun to you, reach out to me. You can actually set up a call with me if you go to calendly.com/talk with Brandon, and Calendly spelled CALENDLY.com/talk with Brandon. Set up a time and we can figure out, getting you here, scheduling dates, payment arrangements, all that jazz. And I'd love to have you, if you're feeling the call to step into this portal where archangels are swirling and spirit animals are roaming the halls, then we'd love to have you. And Tricia, I'm really looking forward to having you here and co-creating magic with you. It just feels like I definitely get the feeling that we'll be doing multiple things together here in the future, and that excites me a lot.
Oh, it excites me too. And I just have to say thank you so very much for the work that you are doing on our beautiful world. And also thank you to all of you Positive Ahead listeners and the work that you're doing to shine your light. We all experience it. And I love and appreciate you, Brandon, and everyone who is connecting to this experience in this time. And so it is.
And so it is. Until next time, journey well, everyone. Love you so much. And if you're feeling the call to come for a week retreat style Mystic Manor immersion, remember to go now and book your time to speak with me directly about stepping into the optimistic vortex at calendly.com/talk with Brandon while there are still spots left. Otherwise, I look forward to co-creating magic with you at the Mystic Manor.